Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And it is Friday the 13th.
It is.
I was about to say in the UK.
In the UK? No, it's only in the UK.
In other countries, it's a completely different day.
Yeah.
I mean, when we've dropped this episode, no, it would still...
It's still Friday the 13th. Of course. Great opening.
Somewhere else. But yes, there you go. I've completely screwed us away by thinking that Friday the 13th would only be an arc.
It's localised entirely in this house.
Yes, that's it. Everywhere else, you're on Friday the 10th, 12th, or 14th, but you cannot have Friday the 13th.
Not allowed.
It is only a British tradition.
It's only a British tradition. Which is strange because we're obviously covering a film that's not made in Britain or has anything to do with Britain. And we covered the first Friday the 13th. We actually did, I believe, episode 7 back when we were, children in the podcast.
November 2020.
November 2020.
Nothing happened that year.
No, nothing happened. Nothing happened that year at all. And then last year for Friday the 13th. We did our favourite Friday the 13th films. So we thought we would come full circle and do the remake, the 2009, kind of remake, reboot.
Yes, actually.
2-for-1 deal kind of film.
Just to throw that in there, by the way, this is must-see horror.
Yeah, it's also
This is a must-see horror. Just to be clear with the must-see horror. Well, now we've done this list for years now, I think.
I think it has been years.
We still probably aren't even halfway through this 100 best, and I do that. I'm doing air quotes. I'm really off what makes sense in the world right now, because you can't see me doing that, but it's air quotes.
I can see you.
We've talked several times about how, even though we bought this scratch-off lists off of Amazon, and we were like, yes, these are the best according to this site, there are some really left-wing, random-ass choices. Some are more modern ones, which were like, no one would put this in their best list of all-time horror.
I think you mean left field as opposed to left-wing.
Left-wing.
There's some very left-wing films on there.
I don't understand how days work. I don't understand air quotes. And I don't understand a lot in this episode.
No, you don't.
I'm all over. That's fine. I'll take that.
You'll take that on the chip. That's a usual. Boom roasted.
But yeah, in terms of the must-see horror, obviously this is... Even though I've said it's completely random choices, it's not in terms of Friday the 13th films. It's not saying that the remake is the one that you should have on your must-see. It's actually the original that has on there. But we've already covered the original. So with our films on must-see horror, whenever we have a film that we've already done, we're not just going to redo it.
No.
We've decided that we will do either another film in that franchise or the remake if it has a remake, because obviously they're not on the list. So we've done on episode 7, like you mentioned, we did the original Friday the 13th. We have talked about many Friday the 13th films before. But I think the remake is one that we've kind of talked around. It may have made it onto the list.
We flirted with that.
It's made it onto some of our other lists, I think, before. But no, we've never covered this one. So we're doing this instead of the original for our must-see horror.
Yeah, and it's an interesting film because it came out on the back of that kind of, Platinum Dunes. Let's reboot, remake a bunch of classic 70s and 80s horrors with a lick of new paint. So you got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you got Friday the 13th, you got Nightmare on Elm Street, you had Halloween, you had a lot of the big hitters, but then you also had stuff like The Fog, you had The Thing, you had there was not all of those were Platinum Dunes.
Not all of them
were Platinum Dunes.
They were not all produced by Michael Bay.
No, but they were very much like, let's give it kind of a modern lick of paint.
Yeah,
they were all kind of had varying successes. I'll be a bit controversial, but every time I kind of watch this film, I find myself liking it less and less. I remember when we first watched it when it came out.
I think I've gone the opposite way. I think I like it more. I liked it more, whereas I wasn't the biggest fan when we first watched this, and I remember us watching this.
I remember we watched. Yeah.
I remember us sitting in my house, for some reason sitting oddly close to the television.
I think, if I remember correctly,
was it a good copy? It was a shitty copy.
It was a shitty copy, but it was shitty copies at the time. And if I remember, the reason why we were sat close was, I think your mum was replacing the sofas. So I don't think there were any sofas and we were sat on the floor. I seem to remember
Which probably, in that old house, probably meant we were sat on a concrete floor.
Probably sat on a concrete floor. Yeah.
Because that house did not have a carpet for a good portion of my teenage years.
No. But I remember us watching it, and it opens up with a kind of a very like... and that's what I mean. It's kind of almost the main points of the first 3 films.
Yeah.
In this bastard child.
Kind of blended together, isn't it?
Yeah, because you have the opening, which is the end of the first one, in black and white, where a counsellor kills Jason's mum. Jason's deformed little baby in the bushes watching. Why he didn't just say, "Mum, I'm here," when she's like, "You killed him, you let him drown." That fucked me off straight off the bat. I was like, that's really weird. And then it has kind of elements.
Obviously, in the original, obviously, we don't know that Jason until he pops out, and we still don't even know if that was a real or a nightmare in the original kind of thing. So the fact that they just show him, because apart from that, this is basically the last 5 minutes or so of the original film, basically remade with different actress and instead of just doing the original version, they've come back and just done a little quick black and white remake.
Yeah.
But it's weird to have him just stare.
It's so weird, isn't it? And then you have sack Jason for about the first opening, and then you also have the storyline that they had in the third one, where that guy's looking for his sister, and they've expanded that to be kind of like the subplot or the main plot of the film. But
I didn't even remember that plot in the first one.
I did.
I mainly just remembered it just having 3D effects and
maybe it's in the fourth one then. I think it's the fourth final chapter.
So they blended.
They blended all 4.
They blended everything until it goes supernatural, basically. Because this is the only one that's not really supernatural, which is kind of one thing I like, is the fact that it goes back to the basics of it instead of going to the he never dies and lives on, and he's that kind of, which is some people's favourite stage of Jason, obviously. But I quite like the slightly more grounded version.
Well, whereas I said this to my wife, who watched about half of the film with me and doesn't usually like the films, but found herself jumping at times and being quite unsettled. I said when I watch the films, I start on the 4th, the final chapter, and then work from there, because I prefer the undead Jason.
But I quite like the more grounded ones.
You like the grounded
ones? Although I enjoyed the more supernatural ones, I think that they are when it start to get ridiculously insane, which is the tongue-in-cheek version of Jason, I think, which a lot of people love and a lot of people know well. And whereas they forget about the early Sackhead and the early different parts and stuff like that. Yeah,
and I think the film I think the film starts pretty cool.
I really like, after we've got past that opening bit, which is very quick anyway. And it's just the last couple of minutes of, well, not the last, but it's just the conclusion, the reveal of the mother being the killer. Which in terms of this one has very little impact anyway. So it's kind of, it's there to give the background. They remade that part, but oddly this one actually doesn't. If you look at the rest of this film, it actually doesn't need that part. It doesn't need the bit about the mother, because it doesn't really imply. And Jason seems to be somewhat of an independent character anyway, so you don't actually need that part. But the bit I do like is the camping part next. Yeah, I quite like it as a quick thing, and it has some of the better deaths of the whole film in this first 10-minute section or so. Yeah. Basically, a bunch of people have come out into the woods on a camping thing looking together. They're all kind of a group of different so this is a little bit more free. Where they're kind of going out on the camping, not so much to be camp counselors. They're here to be they're just here to do a thing. One of them has heard stories about a weed farm or something.
I'm gonna get weed.
That which is a controversial little part of this film, which some people is the main reason some people hate this film, is the whole weed part of this film. Because it implies that he's basically a weed farm, and Jason Voorhees the weed farm.
Jason, because I remember that's a conversation we had when the film came out. You were hearing the reviews, and you were apparently Jason's a weed farmer now. And I was like, what?
So, but it just is like basically that he's still day to day. That it is highly like throughout the film. It's not like 100% confirmed, but it's implied that he's the one that's laying all of this land, and that's what he does during his days. You know, it fills in the gap of what Jason does when he's not there.
Smokes weed all day.
He just basically lays and smokes weed, and you know he lays the ground and he crops, and he's a farmer.
He's a farmer.
Some people really hate the fact that Jason is basically just a farmer.
He's a domesticated man.
Yeah. It's another, or that his mother was a weed farmer.
His mum was
he
the weed
inherited
farmer.
that.
Yeah,
you know,
family business.
And some people also hate the fact that Jason goes from that tiny, scrawny, weird kid you see at the beginning of the film to this hulking Adonis.
He is an Adonis.
Yeah. I mean, he looks. If you like, you don't get to see him topless because I just don't know what's underneath. But it looks like he's rippling six pack, and he looks like he looks like the version of Jason that some people would be like, you know what? I did.
Yeah, I'll let him pound.
Because it is
Adonis.
Is it Mears?
Derek Mears, yeah.
Yeah. Perfectly, absolutely good, good as it. He's got as many places in horror. Works very well, but yeah, he's a fairly intimidating figure in this film, and I like some of the ways they show him, but
and he's a good, as a kind of as that creature character, he's pretty good. He obviously plays Jason, but then he had a role in Hills Have Eyes 2, Predators, Pirates of the Caribbean, Strangers on Strange Tides or whatever, that the one where all of the good people aren't in anymore. So he's been in some kind of other stuff, Men in Black 2. I just feel like I don't know. I kind of find that I don't know if I particularly like this version of Jason. It feels and maybe it's because I prefer that kind of hulking undead. But seeing him kind of run a lot, and that sort of stuff feels very
there
odd.
are definitely things that, especially as the film goes along, that kind of veer into I don't know if Jason would do that. And I remember that being a major kind of tipping point when we first watched it. One thing that pissed me off when we first watched this film, which is why I kind of didn't like it for a long time, was the fact that it's like in the Friday the 13th game when you have the mode where you can just pop
teleport.
up anywhere.
Yeah,
you can teleport. It was like he was fucking because it's like, how the hell did you get from down there to all the way up there? I know you're Jason, but that's fucking. How did you sneak into that bathroom?
Yeah.
How the fuck did you get in there? Because you were all the way down what looks like down a quite steep slope.
Yeah. You're
all the way down there, and suddenly you're moments later in a bathroom. It's like, the fuck? How can you teleport?
Yeah. Well, there's a bit where and I really like the kills in the opening part. So there's a bit where the guy called Richie, who's shagging his girlfriend, he goes out to do something because he thinks his weird mates who's after the weed.
The stoner guy's like, he's like, he thinks that she's like, is he watching us? And there certainly is. And she's like, you're not getting anything else until you do. So obviously he gets fully clothed really fast because he's like, I want to pound.
I want to carry on. I want to go before it droops. And you do get a cool shot where Jason's behind the tent, and he runs into the bear trap. She's kind of hung up in the sleeping bag. Really cool. But then the next scene, the sister and her boyfriend, generic boyfriend number one, are in the bathroom.
They've gone down through
the
caverns.
They haven't gone through the caverns. They're in the house. We don't know about the caverns yet.
Oh yeah, but they're still searching around.
They're still searching around the house
for quite a while to get it.
And he's suddenly there, and he kind of attacks them in the bathroom, and the house does look like a shithole, and it does look like they find Pamela's head and there's stuff like that. But it does make me think you're there, you're you must be out of breath because you're sprinting everywhere. 1 minute you're hanging this woman up. And then the next, you're under the floorboards attacking them. And then when she's got out of there and she goes to help her friend in the bear trap, you're behind her straight away, you know?
I mean, I guess in the Friday the 13th, there's always been a slight he could pop up anywhere. But it just pushes the problem is, I guess, maybe that it makes you so aware of the large distances between their locations around the map. Kind of thing. It's like they might as well just show you, here's the map.
Yeah.
These are on this side of the camp. Jason is on this side of the camp.
Yeah.
Where? How did he get
How's
from
he
this?
getting there?
It's like he's in one area and then he's on the other side of a lake, and it's like, wait, the fuck? They had to drive.
Yeah.
You're fucking there, and then suddenly you're back over. It is a major problem with this film, and the more I think about it, the more I was like, yeah, it was still very present there in this film. Maybe I just was blanking out.
You were just, yeah.
My last watch the other day, I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to try and ignore that part.
Just ignore
the fact that he's like on one side of a lake, and then suddenly he's on the opposite side of and then suddenly he's back at the house, even though the couple drive a long way.
Yeah.
Again, this is flying around, but we are sticking to like our main points of the film, kind of thing. Yeah, it's a really annoying, that no one kind of thinks those parts through. Now, I know these remakes in general have a fairly big stick that comes up. There's some people that absolutely hate every single one of them.
Yeah.
They think they're all unnecessary, and in many ways they are unnecessary. Some of them are just a complete retread, a complete go back over.
Yeah.
The one thing, and I know this is like a jumble of the three, but I think that's the one thing that I did slightly like, is the fact that sometimes with the Friday the 13th film, let's be honest, you have characters, and then you have very little to a plot.
Oh yeah,
in quite a lot of them. And at least in this one, it felt like they were trying to give a story in some way. It felt like there was. I know I completely forgot about the fact that the fourth one has somewhat of this kind of story.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't remember it being, played out in that way. I do think that this one's quite good in terms of it. It does somewhat kind of catch you off guard the first time you saw it. I think some people die that you don't necessarily expect to die. Some people, some of the deaths vary from ones that you think, oh, okay, didn't expect them to go like that, to you didn't deserve that. There is a character who I believe has come up many times in this film who we have talked about, and we'll talk about his death, but the
Chewie.
need for Chewie.
Oh yeah.
is so. Why does he get... Not necessarily the absolute worst, but definitely the top 3 worst deaths. Why does a character like that get such a...
horrid death?
And that fucker Trent? Is it Trent?
Trent, yeah.
Why does that fucker Trent get such a fucking quick death when he's an absolute bellend the whole film?
Yeah, I remember...
But Chewie, the best character in the whole film, gets fucking...
He gets like a real slow
disgustingly
death.
Horrible slow death.
Yeah. And I remember I thought Trent's death wasn't quite as... It is a bit worse than I remember it. But it still kind of goes down to...
It's not a terrible death. It's just like some characters deserve one type of death and other characters deserve a very horrible slow death.
And a lot of the deaths themselves are kind of a bit like... I think they open with the best deaths.
I think so. I think the rest of them some of them come a bit thick and fast as we come.
Yeah.
I mean, they lay out enough characters that we get a good amount of death across the whole film, and this opening definitely leads us to get a good, nice, array. The one you mentioned, obviously, we get the first one with the rich stoner guy.
Yeah.
He gets off screen, kind of.
That's fine,
which is fine because it's the first one, and it builds up to what the characters see in a minute. I think this one works in terms of like an off-screen death because it's like, so what's happened to him? It's about the other character discovering this character.
Yeah.
It's what adds to the horror of it. But as we mentioned about the whole, the best probably death is probably when I've got the actor's real name is Ben Feldman. He's from the TV show Superstore, which is why I was like, oh, I recognise that dude. He's in Superstore.
It's Jonah.
Yeah,
yeah. Richie.
Yeah, Richie. Is that Richie?
That's the guy.
You see, I'm thinking the glasses stoner guy should be called Richie.
Yes, he should. Yeah, Ben
if you
Feldman.
listen to our last episode, Funhouse. Richie is
Richie is the name of the Coke bottles now. Yeah. But yeah, he gets a real good death.
First he obviously discovers his mate who's been slaughtered.
Yeah.
And then he sees that he'd found the weed.
Yeah.
He'd got like a machete to the mouth. I think it basically had been sliced through. And then he runs back and gets a bear trap on his leg, and it's cool because you see the flesh that's been pulled away up it, which I think is a really nice, cool effect. It looks legitimately like terrible, and then it gets worse when he realizes that his girlfriend
cook
is literally being held over by Jason, who's holding her over.
Was she strung up?
Oh, is she? Yeah, I thought he was holding.
No, he's strung up because I think the idea is that
He's definitely
stripped
holding
her
it
up.
at some point because I remember seeing him like moving it across the
Maybe.
fire kind of thing.
I thought he was strung up, and as she's trying to break out, it's going.
He might have fully strung it up. I for some reason I thought he was holding it. But anyway, it's the fact that like it's burning and you get shots of her inside as she starts to get more and more like you can see her skin like starting to boil and bubble a little bit.
It's brutal, man.
And as it goes through, it's really cool. And then we get he gets there, he's trying it out, we get the full like Jason kind of there, he must be strong because he disappears off.
He runs off to with the other guys.
Yeah, and then you see the bag break and her whole body just like slumps out in this big sweaty, burnt up kind of mess, and it's awesome. And he's like just screaming. It's really cool. And his death, which comes we get a little bit of a delay as Jason goes off and finds the other two at the house and chases through and grabs her and slices through the guy's leg through the floor. And,
which is a cool scene.
Yeah, and it all adds a nice little tension. It's all quick, and I think it's it is a good opening for this kind of film to feel like we quick, thick and fast have got deaths. And we've got effective deaths, and there's even enough little character moments between these few ones that you're kind of like, okay, I get what this character is. I get what we don't get anything that would be expected, but it's a Friday the 13th film. There's not much.
It's basically it, isn't it?
And his death, Richie's death, when he gets the whole,
machete into the skull.
Yeah,
that's so good.
I think it's really cool. It's awesome. The slicing through it kind of thing, the effect it looks awesome, I think.
Oh, it looks great.
Yeah, I think that him and his girlfriend definitely get some of the strongest of the deaths, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of the gore looks really good. I think the effects of the kills look great. And there's some, that just flow really nicely. So, I don't think all of the deaths, I think there definitely could be some that could be embellished a bit more. We don't seem to get any beheading, which is, I know it's a strange request, but I think you kind of...
When you've got a machete going around,
you kind of get... But you get some that flow quite nicely, like the one that stands out to me the most is the poker. The police officer gets through the eye, and you see it go through the door, and it's all one shot. That's really nice. But after we get these kind of opening kills, and it kind of teases...
We wonder what this is... Why have they just added on this opening death? Is it just for the death? You don't straight away know why it's kind of the purpose of it, because then you meet a whole new group of people. And the fact that one thing is, I guess, is we say remake, but it's not quite really a remake, is it? It blends ideas that have previously been done in some ways, remaking ideas. But as a whole thing, there's none of these are camp counsellors, so it cancels out the first two, so they're not camp counsellors. It's more in vein with maybe the third and fourth, I guess, when you've got more of a group of friends or stuff like that, they're kind of going to the camp. Yeah. So it's a little bit more like that, and I guess we layer on. So we've got a group of friends who are visiting, then we get mixed into Jared Palecki's
Clay Miller
looking
for his sister,
who is looking for his sister, who then now we know why, because his sister who was taken, who we assume Jason murdered her, so you're just on a useless hunt for
wild goose chase. So, and I don't buy, unfortunately this may get me tarred and feathered, but I just don't buy Jared Padalecki as this kind of main character. I also don't really, the woman, the character Jenna, who is like Trent's girlfriend, who kind of is quite sympathetic to him, and you think she's got to slot into that kind of like final girl thing. She doesn't really drink. She's a bit more like kind of on the innocent side, if you'd say. When they're all partying, when they get to the place, she's outside like, oh, should we go for a hike or a walk? Yeah, I think that she's she's as exciting as a slice of bread, and I don't buy him, and I don't like the
you're definitely right. She's not. Danielle Panabaker as Jenna is not the most interesting of our final girls, I guess, as you're thinking about it, kind of thing. Yeah. I think where it goes with her is somewhat makes it better, I guess. But yeah, we've not exactly got standout. To be honest, I've said that, like, wasn't it, Travis Van Winkle as Trent. I've said that he's a complete arsehole, but in some ways he adds some of the more interesting parts to this film.
Yeah, I think he's a good character.
Aaron Yu as Chewie, and who am I missing? I'm missing the other
Lawrence, and then the other guy who is completely forgettable, who Wade maybe. He's just like
it must be
slightly generic.
I will say I've got
the
cast list in front of me, and I'm just thinking, why is this dude like?
Nolan,
basically, they put all of the Friends characters together, and then they put him like way down, even though he's somewhat in it as much. I guess he's there as much as the rest of them are. He maybe doesn't do as much. He's a dude that he has the one scene where he says about like. He's trying to be like, just because I'm black, I can't listen to Green Day.
Lawrence is a good character.
Oh, where is he? I don't see. Why is he so far down the list? He's like halfway down the.
Yeah, well, so's Nolan is the really forgettable guy with like the blonde hair.
Oh yeah, he gets barely. Even though I'd actually say he's probably the one that's actually slightly more known to this day.
Maybe
Ryan Hansen. Yeah, Ryan Hansen's been in a lot more stuff. Yeah, he's been in all kind of things that people would know him for, like Veronica Mars, Party Down, stuff like that.
Boy band.
But yeah, they know him for quite a lot of things.
G.I. Joe Retaliation.
That's why I was wondering why Lawrence was so far down the list, because he's in it a lot longer than most of these, and yet he seems to have been put down there. I don't know why that is.
The Gina Davis Show, 2001.
But yeah, you're right. Nolan is a
he's the most forgettable.
He's a more forgettable character than and Chelsea Sanders.
Just so
Willa Ford as Chelsea Sanders. They're a couple, and there's not a lot to them, but then they are meant to be basically an early kill, which is what they get. They get a fairly it's not long basically after we arrive, after we've had the whole. Trent and Clay Miller have had their little showdown in the
Who's
store.
got the biggest dick?
Who's the and Jenna is mainly just there to just be like roll her eyes and be like, all right guys,
stop it. He's looking for his sister. Oh fuck his sister.
And this is why with this, it is a Friday the 13th film. This is not, in terms of like plot and stuff like that. No. This is as simple as a group of friends are at a thing. They have the asshole Trent, who's the rich boy who basically doesn't want them to touch his stuff even though he's in the house. And is basically shouldn't be with Jenna because they're completely different people. She goes off with Clay when he arrives at the house, still searching for his sister. And that's basically it until we get Nolan and Chelsea go on the ride. Yeah, they take Trent's car, tells him to be careful with his car, so then we'll obviously get huge jumping and waving over the things. And he tells him not to go on the boat. And of course they go on the boat.
Of course they go on the boat, man.
And this one comes figure out. It's kind of his Nolan's is really fast. He's driving along and gets an arrow through the skull,
which is quite cool.
Yeah, because it's so quick. We've got our music playing. It hits into the tunes and boom. And then they're driving around and she's doing the jet ski, topless, of course.
Of course, man.
We have to have a couple of scenes.
This is our second pair of tits as well. We get tits at the start. It's almost like you get tits in each act.
We get another pair of tits.
You get stupendous tits.
You do indeed.
The tits kind of do improve in quality as the film goes
they go
on.
along. I think these are the fit. But I think for the scene that they're doing, these may be the tits that were needed. Because if the girl later on was doing this scene, Jesus Christ, she'd have a black eye. I think she would have killed herself when she tried to do this.
Bam.
I think if Juliana Gill as Brie had tried to do this scene, she would be in serious pain. Because, there's let's just say, Chelsea doesn't need to worry so much about them flailing around. No. But it adds. I quite like this scene because although Nolan is off quickly, it adds a lot of tension when obviously Chelsea ends up in the water and the boat is coming towards her. And you think, oh shit, she's gonna get rammed up inside of the propeller, or she's gonna get smashed in properly by the boat, or something like that, like a sleepaway camp or something.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like that,
But, and I couldn't actually remember what happened to her in this one, to be honest. I didn't remember this bit. So, she gets smashed in the head by the boat. Her head's bleeding. She's struggling to get back. She spots Jason at the side. We have skipped to death because Jason's got his mask at this point.
Yeah, he kills the random hit guy.
We forgot. It's the retarded rapper from Always Sunny.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
They say,
they
he
say
is
that.
dating a retard.
You're allowed to say it this
I'm
time.
allowed to say it. It's
You're
in
allowed
the
to say
title
it.
of
That's
something.
what the title of the show is.
He has literally called it. It's an Always Sunny. You can check me. You can't cancel.
We could
for that
fact
one.
check you on that one.
But yeah, it's that dude playing the weird ass dude who's found he's found Jason's weed.
Yeah, which
And
is
he's like,
weird
"Don't
as
touch
well.
it." And he talks about banging a mannequin.
Yeah, which
And he's like, I'm going to fuck you tonight.
I'm gonna fuck you hard
You're
or
gonna love
something
how
like
I
that.
get. And he licks
licks
the
his-
porn mag.
yeah.
And generally just comes across as the skeeviest little retard. I apologise. That one.
That one
Rob's giving me a discerning look.
I'm a naughty boy. Yeah, that one just fucking slipped out, didn't it?
Sorry, inbred is what I meant.
Inbred.
He's an inbred. He appears to be an inbred anyway. There's definitely something weird about him.
It's definitely something.
He just gets a nice throat slashing, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Which you were hoping for a head chopping.
I was hoping for a head chopping.
And this was just for Jason to get his mask. This was just so he could go into the barn, just like in part 3, and find a mask. He's like, oh, I need to put my sack back on, and oh no,
oh, beautiful.
Under this is a beautiful mask,
beautiful,
that
pristine mask. And I was thinking, like, at this point, okay, like, the Hick is the guy who had the
weed.
He's grown the weed.
He's grown it.
And then it's like, no, I found this weed, and I'm like,
Jason's pissed off that he took his weed.
It's like
this is a legitimate, seems to be a legitimate thread that runs through this film. Is you fucking touch my weed and you're dying.
I'm gonna kill you.
Jason is somewhere fucking getting high as shit.
It does. It gets to the point where, like, if they were camp counsellors, you could be like, well, okay, that's why he's killing them. But now it just looks like he's just growing. He's just
growing weed and
just
killing anyone
weed.
that comes near
Anybody
his
who
weed.
comes near his weed.
Even though most of these guys don't go anywhere near his weed.
But they might have.
Yeah.
Or they could.
The
so
intention
that's
of why Jason is killing is basically as much as anyone who comes to Camp Crystal Lake deserves to die. Which makes you wonder why Trent's family has never been murdered.
Yeah.
Because they apparently have a really nice house. They go on the boat all the time.
They're too old. They don't smoke
Trent's
weed.
been there loads of times. He's never been murdered before, but this time he gets linked in with someone who touched the weed. Even though he doesn't get linked in with someone who touched the weed.
Yeah.
Clay is technically the only one that should be in the firing line, really, and Jenna, because she goes along with him. The rest of them actually should be alright.
Yeah, it's like...
But he just murders them.
It's like in A Violent Nature, you know?
Yeah.
It's when they have the mother's locket, you know?
Yeah.
In this, somebody looked at Jason's weed and he's like, well, I have to kill all of you now.
Yeah.
You looked at my weed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of weird.
You're right. There is actually a very... I didn't think of the fact. There's a very little actually reason of why Jason specifically is killing people in this film.
Unless they
outside of it just being it's Jason, he kills people.
Unless when they produced this so they could grow weed, and they were like, well, if we grow it, we can just say it's part of the set.
This is Michael Bay. This is Michael Bay's weed stuff. And he was like, I need. Basically, the cops have just got me, and I need to tell them that this is for a film.
Yeah, this is for a film.
What have we got in our remake that we could? Jason.
Wait.
Jason for it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Why do all your films have somebody killing somebody about weed?
I mean,
Michael?
This is to hide. This one's to hide Michael Bay's need for weed. Transformers is there just so he can molest underage girls. There's a reason for all of his films,
They are. He saw it and was like, the seediness is what I can get away with it,
We'll probably find out one day that what is it? What's the one he did with The Rock? Pain and Gain or something? It was just so he could gather sperm of Mark Wahlberg to make his own superhumans. Yeah, he extracted the semen through traditional methods.
So
now this is why I don't think about the plot of a Friday the 13th film, because the more I think about it, the more I think that most of these films are shit from the perspective of plot and story. When I just think about Jason killing people, then I think that the kills and stuff in this one and Jason killing people is fine. The more I think about the story, the more I fucking hate it again.
And that's what I mean. I just think it's a decent film, but it's I
think for a Friday the 13th film in terms of death, I think that this is actually quite good.
Yeah.
I think for a Friday the 13th, even then, it still tries harder with some kind of a story than half of them do.
I don't know. I feel like I said, I don't really generally tend to watch the others. I feel like 4 tells is just a good slasher film. Like you said, you're not always watching it for the story, but it's good. I think 6 is good. I think 7 they try and throw in like they try and throw a curveball, and I enjoy it. And then even 8, I think it's kind of like he goes. I mean, he doesn't really go to New York. He's just on a boat. I'm kind of like I enjoy that because I'm not watching.
He's in New York for a little bit.
I'm not watching. And then in the 9th one, whatever, it's kind of like
you're watching for the deaths.
I'm watching
you're
for
watching
the deaths.
for Jason just being a fucking undead hulking.
And I'm watching for the fun of it.
Fun and cheesy.
For the fun of it, Whereas I feel like...
Well, and that's what I just say. Friday the 13th is really not for... It's not needed for a story,
No.
We know what we want from a Friday the 13th, and in a big, complex story is not necessarily,
no.
what anyone necessarily wants from it. Yeah,
but,
I don't mind the way that it kind of blends things together though in this one. I think it's okay for what it is, kind of thing.
Yeah, I just find like I don't really like the 2 people that were supposed to be rooting for. I don't have anything against Jared Padalecki, but I just feel like it's
generally. I mean, anyone who's watched Jared Padalecki, I have not watched Supernatural really.
You've watched everything you've seen.
But I have watched several other things that Jared Padalecki, and I will say that Wooden comes across many times.
Yeah.
He's the least like. To be honest, I've probably watched him mostly Gilmore Girls. I've watched Gilmore Girls.
You do like
and he's the most unlikable. I found him the most unlikable character. But in other things and films I've seen him in, I normally find him very bland and very fit. And he is. Clay is a very bland, unlikable character. I mean, I'd say that Trent is a dick, but at least there's some kind of charismatic to this dude that someone looks. I can't look at that dude who plays Trent, Travis Van Winkle. I always think he just looks a bit like a young Tom Cruise. I think he looks a bit like a Cruise.
But here's the thing: I find that
and he's got a little bit of a somewhat. He's an asshole, but there's a somewhat of a like. At least the dude has a charismatic kind of fun time being an asshole.
And that's part of the problem I have is that you with the Friday the 13th films, you're not getting much character from the people, but you're getting a character to some extent. They will have some kind of defining feature. And for instance, like you have in part 7, I think it is, you have like the sci-fi nerd. You have like the really shy girl. You have the bitchy girl. You have the one with powers. They're all very boilerplate kind of stereotypical characters, but they fit that role, and for the story they move it forward. With this, I think you get Trent, who plays he plays a good asshole, rich asshole. You get Chewie, who's like the comic relief stoner, who's a real good funny character. And Lawrence has his moments as being like a good character.
He's kind of a side stoner.
Kind of like a side stoner.
He doesn't. There's not too much.
He's like
talks about doing the rat dude.
He's not quite as half baked as the other. And then you get Nolan, who basically his character
Nolan's just like the jock that just likes to do what he wants, but it's not really clear that he's the jock that do. You know what I mean?
He's not the jock because he's why does he have why does he look like he would be perfectly placed in Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the 70s, He's got like a blonde bob and he wears like a vest, and then the girls are just interchangeable tit machines, apart from Jenna, who's
I mean, definitely like that. But then, apart from the main girl half the time, the girls were half the time just tit machines.
Tit machines? I don't know what that even means.
I don't know what that means.
Just tit machines.
They were just basically product placement for tits.
Product placement for tits.
And also then mixing the fact that it's partially by Michael Bay, and he
He
probably
wanted to be off.
He probably had a major process in choosing all of the tits.
Of course he did.
I'm sure he didn't show up to set once until it was the day to
It was
film
only
a set
tits.
scene or choose who's going to have tits in the film.
Yeah, that's all
That
he
was
did.
it. Like, that's the only reason. And he watched from inside a little black box.
And to keep an eye on his weed.
To make sure that no one was
To make sure the grow was good.
Yeah, that's all. That's mainly just for Michael Bay. Let's get back to kills.
I mean,
it's the main thing that links this film together.
Yeah.
We didn't finish the kill of.
Well, Chewie's got the screwdriver in the throat. Chelsea gets a good kill. You know, she's hiding under the, she's hiding under the dock.
Yeah.
Jason's above, and then she thinks she's safe, and the machete.
I like there's a kind of humorousness to this.
There is,
because she's kind of hiding and wondering what's happening. You see Jason walk over, you think he's walking away, and then Shunk goes in, and it's the fact that her whole body gets lifted up to the top just to show blood pouring down her head and to show tits one more time.
Tit machine.
Again, Michael Bay had a huge choice. He was like, but could we show tits one more time?
Can we do it again, please? Try it slower.
And then I like the way it just pulls at her, her body just drops and flunks down.
But that's what gets me. That's quite a funny kill, and it has moments where it's kind of flirting with a bit of fun. But then it's
quite a serious Friday the 13th film. It is trying to be a more serious one.
And it feels like this is one where somebody is kind of bended in half in part 6. Part 6 is quite a darkly comic film.
Yeah.
It feels almost like they were like Texas Chainsaw Massacre's gritty. It's down. And the first Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a bit gritty. It's about a paedophile.
All of these were pretty much... All of the Platinum Dunes, especially the Michael Bay produced ones, were quite serious with the matter. Yeah. They weren't fun ones. They were quite dark, which worked for the ones that should have been dark, like Texas Chainsaw. Controversial. Some people might fucking hate that, but I think that's a good... I quite like that remake.
A lot of people
and
like
stand apart from the original in a nice way.
But this should have been more of a fun film.
The problem is, at the time, it wasn't there wasn't a load of around when these films were remade. It wasn't really tons of fun kind of horror films. They were taking it in a more serious. I guess it was bringing it up to date. Even now, I mean, I'd like to say that if someone made one now, they'd make it on film, but I feel like they'd end up closer to this more serious Jason tone than they would to the fun 80s tone. It would be nice, because I think that would work really coolly, and a lot of people might prefer it if they tried to go with a bit more of somewhat nostalgia 80s kind of style and do a Jason film where it feels like there's real fun and over the top, and just not thinking too much about having to make everything make sense. Yeah. Which again, this film still doesn't do that, but no. It feels like they're still trying to make within the plot of a structure here. Yeah. Whereas some of the other Friday the 13th don't really feel like it feels very loose with let's just go over there, let's do that, let's go there, let's do this. Not so much. And as you've mentioned, as we go onwards, the deaths. Yeah. The next one we get is after these two have been offed. I think that is the next one we get. Is that Chewie?
I think it's Chewie. We get a cool scene where he's in the shed looking for stuff. He's playing with a hockey stick.
He broke Trent's chair.
Fucking
his dad's chair. So he's like, I'll go and fix it, man. And I like it. He's going through. He's looking at ski stuff. He's looking at tools. He's like, this stuff has never been fucking used. Yeah. No one's fucking touched this. No one goes. They don't fix a fucking chair. They hire someone to fix a goddamn chair. Trent's going to be that rich kind of thing.
And then, he bumps into Jason, he gets the screwdriver.
He tries to fight him a little bit, and then he gets held up, gets the screwdriver, but let's not gloss over, it's slow.
It's slow.
It's not jammed in there. He is trying to fight it, but that almost makes it worse. It's almost dude, just let go and just
do it. Let him kill you.
Fucking pump it in you.
Now, let him pump you.
What I did tell you was Jason's penis is also inside him. Is in his mouth. They don't show that bit, but you only see it from the neck up. Yeah. But it's actually Jason's
stretching
his
anus.
He's inside him at the same time. But yeah, he's that again. The stoner dude in the film never got near his stash.
Yeah.
He would have been the perfect character to end up near Jason's staff and be like, oh my god, this is the most glorious day.
Yeah, it would have been.
But instead, No, he never got. No, he smokes weed. Maybe Jason just.
Maybe
is that my weed?
Is that mine? I'm killing him.
Nah, this is some cheat.
Yeah,
this is some cheat shit.
This is cheap mid. You smoke mid, you die. You know.
But instead, I just remember it. I remember the first time we watched it being like, this is the dude that's bringing some humour, some like fun to it.
Yeah.
This film, and now we've offed him, and just watching it and being like, oh, dude didn't deserve that.
He did not
Look
deserve
how fucking
that.
painful that felt. Like,
it
makes you
horrid.
think. Horrid. Me. Neck. Fucking no.
You don't like the neck. And I mentioned Chewie's death in our first In Memoriam Characters We Didn't Want to Die. Episode 4, maybe. So go and check it out. Go way back. And then...
Yeah, and alongside this, we've obviously got Trent and
Trent's fucking clapping away.
You've got
He's on the job.
Bree is trying to like make him like has been trying to basically get him in a,
and she does, you know,
and she does because you know
she rides it.
She shows the sex.
She goes hell for leather, doesn't she?
She gets her camera. You know? She's obviously setting him up for some kind of blackmail later on.
Something like
where
that.
she's like, you're rich as fuck. Why the hell do you think I wanted you in me? Because I want your money.
I want the money.
You shouldn't be with Jenna. I'm more of the lass that should be with the dollar bill guy.
With the dollar.
You know, but I'm going to film it so that if you accidentally impregnate me, I can prove it, and therefore you'll have to pay me half of your estate.
Yeah, you know.
She's setting him up.
She's setting him up. She's clapping.
She chooses when to get him. You know, there's a darkness to this podcast.
There's a darkness, isn't there? When you look at it through that lens, when you look at it through more tits and just Trent just plapping.
I mean,
fucking loving it.
Like it's literally. I mean, to be fair, this probably is the most full-on sex scene in I think any of the films.
Yeah, probably
because it literally we're full-on watching it. I mean, it basically shows everything but full-on. We're like that close to seeing both dick and vagina.
Dick and vagina,
you know,
and insertion.
Mainly, less so on Trent's side, to be honest. He's there, like right, but you're fully seeing her like riding him, on top of him, just flapping
away.
You know,
he's fucking going.
That sounds more like clapping, which is probably what you would do.
Yeah, I was clapping. I was
clapping.
You know, I was beating off, beating with one hand, clapping with the other. You know,
this is. I'm fairly certain probably around that time. This is probably a lot of people's like favourite scene in the film when you were a certain age of teenage age. This would have been like, oh my god, this is the greatest scene I've ever seen.
This is the best film ever.
And
Michael Bay was obviously loving it.
Scale.
No,
Michael Bay was saying this needed to be filmed in IMAX.
This needed to be filmed in IMAX in 3D. And then you get the classic. You know, you get the good line of stupendous.
It shows how boring that Clay and Jenna are because yes, there are many scenes of them going around and looking, and I think at this sometime around this point. They kind of come back to the house because she's literally... It shows how little there was between their relationship. Because she comes back in, like, banging on the door, like, you need to stop now because there's a murder, like, there's a killer. We're pretty certain there's a killer outside, like, and we're pretty certain we can hear Lawrence, who's gone back outside to fight.
He's got an axe in his
back.
back.
And he's, like, screaming.
And he's like, no, I'm on the vinegar stroke.
Yeah, he's just like, I am right fucking
he's just
here,
like,
guys.
I'm on the vinegar, mate.
I mean... And fair play to Trent. I understand. We understand this decision.
Of course. But we spoke about it in stitches, didn't we?
It's just the fact. It's just the coldness of the fact that she doesn't like. There's no shits given that her boyfriend is riding some other girl, like properly riding. Like you can hear the screams through the door, and she's just like that. Because frankly, if she was a more interesting character, she'd be like, right, fuck them.
Yeah, I'm going.
Fuck them both.
Instead, she
right,
waits.
we'll get out of this house. Tell that dude to come in.
Yeah.
Like, and we because this is a Friday the 13th film. I was somewhat almost expecting I remember when I first saw it, thinking that this has all been built up them having sex, and this is thinking more maybe Freddy versus Jason when you get that awesome like bed. This seemed like it was setting up for Jason just appearing in the room and just fucking slicing through the boat.
It did seem something like that. At least Jason has the courtesy to wait until he's stuck in vinegar. You know,
he's on vinegar strokes outside the window because we know he can, in this film especially. We know he can both be killing Lawrence and doing something else at the same time.
He's on the vinegar outside, like, I'll let him finish. I will finish and then we'll do it.
He is full on whacking it outside that window. While he's also killing Lawrence at the same time.
Because he can do both.
Because he can teleport.
You know?
He's like literally like, getting you with the axe. Wait a second. That's why he doesn't get Lawrence so quickly, because he quickly keeps popping back over to the window.
Yeah, to what?
Just like
keep himself going.
Again, most of the shots are from the waist up. What we don't see is that Jason is just he's chasing after Lawrence, but one hand's on it,
and
he lobs the axe at Lawrence's back.
Yeah, and there's nothing to prove that isn't what's happening. He's beating off. He's smoking weed. He's having a time of his life, you know.
So Lawrence gets a pretty quick off. Obviously, he's used as bait. They think he's being used as bait,
which I don't like.
Yeah, Jason.
You know,
I mean, Jason isn't really necessarily that kind of killer. To kind of be I'm drawing people in to come to me for their. It's just I don't know why. It seems too thought through for someone who's just kind of meant to be pure rage.
And that's what the thing is. A lot of people like this kind of version of Jason, which is this kind of hunter, trapper kind of thing. But I just feel like it just doesn't work. I feel like it's kind of.
I think we're playing with a more intelligent Jason, whereas before he's basically an undead or he's brain dead.
It feels more Hills Have Eyes, or what's the one in the woods? It's got we covered the remake of it. It's got the first one has Elijah Dushku in it.
Oh yeah, the problem I mix it up is because I mix up
the wrong turn.
Wrong term. I always mix it up with Cabin Fever because they're released at the same time, even though they're not the same kind of film at all. But I always mix the two up.
But it feels kind of like that. They set traps
more calculated, more
and that it just feels a bit out of place in this.
And I think that's why this is kind of divisive. Some people will like that style, and some people don't like them changing a character. It's it's like the fact that I don't really like the Rob Zombie Halloween film.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like Michael, especially Halloween 2, which is completely not Michael at all.
Yeah,
there's so far. I think this one doesn't go so far that you're like, that's not Jason at all, kind of thing. Because I guess there were different versions of Jason to kind of pick from, and this is somewhat reinventing him. But yeah, I get you. I get why you don't like the whole more calculated kind of calling them out kind of thing.
And obviously directors
doesn't really lead anywhere because the characters are so aware of it and don't do anything to do it. They don't go after Lawrence.
I mean, funnily enough, it does create a weird dynamic where they briefly talk about it. And my wife started watching it with me around Chewie's death, and we watched the whole film from then on. And we saw Lawrence's bit, and she was like, I'm not scared, but I feel slightly unsettled that something like this could happen. And I was like, that's part of the horror of these films, you know. And then it got to Lawrence's part, and I was like, if that happened, would you come out for me? Would you go, if I'd gone to the shed, if I'd gone to the shed, would you come for me?
Your last dying lad, someone stabbed you in the back and you're just lying there, just seeing Anna quickly run into the car.
Yeah, just drive off, or close the window, close the blinds, you know, and it's
especially when you only stabbed your toe.
Yeah,
she's fucking leaving
just leave it go and drive it off. But it's that weird thing of would it? But it's
what would you do?
What would you do? But it feels like it doesn't play out properly because Jason does it for 30 seconds and then he's just I'll just kill him.
Yeah. Then he fucking appears inside the house.
Then he's somehow on the roof.
He's on the roof, and then obviously they hear him on the roof, so he's on, and then kind of, but he's mainly in the next main part we see him in is in the bathroom.
Yeah, and then he
appears with Bree
on the clothes on a hanger.
Yeah.
Shit death.
It is pretty. It just seems to, and it's just so not Jason to just be the one hiding behind, he's basically hiding behind in the bathroom kind of thing. It's just not Jason. I just didn't feel like that without suddenly I'm here in this dark room, when I'm a fucking huge hulking guy who you're gonna notice, who I don't believe even fit through that fucking window, but it's the only way in for that room. You didn't walk through the door because people were on the other, so outside. She's the only one that's gone running and hiding inside there because she's been freaking out, telling Lawrence to shut up because she can't take the fact that he's dying.
Yeah, stop dying.
Stop dying.
Or die quietly, as they always say.
Which, again, up until that point, kind of liked the character. Then at that point, I was like, oh, fucking hell, you're Seriously? Dude's dying outside and you're just like, fucking shut up.
Let the man scream,
So then obviously you're ready for her to die, but yeah, it's just... And then we don't really fully see her dead until they open up the door and she drops out. It's not a great one, and then it all involves the whole escape where obviously even though they've come to the house to save everyone else, done a shit job because Claire and Jenna are the only ones that run off apart from Trent, who's still like kind of self-involved, and then we get a lot of running around, but then it basically Trent basically ends up in the road, thinking he's getting away to get to one of the trucks, and then shit behind me, there's Jason. Slams him onto the thing, slams the machete through.
This is the scene. I remember him just picking him up and putting him on the back, and it is kind of a bit, gruesome in terms of he stabs him and he kind of like carves into him a little bit, and then he puts him on the back. But it still doesn't feel quite as like out there or gruesome as it should be.
No.
But then it gets this really shit moment where the truck pulls up and it stops, and the old man who's in the car looks similar to the guy, one of the guys from Texas Chainsaw the beginning. It's not the same actor, but I thought it was. And you get this moment where Trent's like looking at the car, and as the audience are almost supposed to be like, oh my god, who is that in the car? Is Jason driving a pickup truck now? Which I wouldn't surprise me. He's growing weed, he's plapping off to people. Like, what's going on? And then Jason just gets him. And the whole thing just kind of felt like, are we supposed to be like, oh, Jason's driving? It felt really kind of out of place.
I did not really know. Well, I didn't even pop my head that they would even try to imply that
because he stares at the car for a good like 10, 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where he's like, who's in the car? Like, am I safe doing this?
Yeah.
And the guy puts his hand out and signals him to get
Trent's an asshole.
Maybe. But
I guess Trent doesn't know anything about Jason or who he is, so I guess you would be like, oh shit, is this the...
But the way they play it is that we're not supposed to know either. They hide the driver. And I'm like, oh, now he drives...
I don't know if that's a little homage to obviously the opening of Friday the 13th.
Maybe it might be.
Where Mrs. Voorhees is driving.
You
don't see who is driving.
Potentially,
backpacker.
It just feels a bit out of place,
And as I said, there's a slight gruesome to it, but it's not enough. Like Trent, when you're going to build up, I always believe when you're going to build up a character to be a really hateable character, charming yet hateable, then dude deserves to get one of those more brutal, sliced in half, cut into, chopped up. Something that he has to feel a bit more. I mean, I guess it is implied he's not fully dead when he's getting driven away. I do like the bit when it like drives away with him stabbed through on the back of the thing, and he's just like on the back of the car as it drives away.
It's kind of cool, but you feel like.
And I like the way the driver's suddenly like, oh shit, get out of here, and it's just gone. But yeah, it's so quick when Chewie's for so long.
And it's kind of like kill him a bit more.
Now, this is when you think, oh, we're almost at the end now, they're going to get out there, and then we get the twists, obviously, that well, it's not really a twist, because they did show a scene, they showed her earlier.
Yeah, they showed her earlier.
Yeah, I forgot they showed her earlier, because I always thought it was saved for a sudden twist right towards the end that happened. Yeah. So I remember being surprised, I was like, oh, they actually show it earlier. I thought, like, it was going to be saved as the twist, they suddenly tried to run away through the tunnels and the sister's here kind of thing. But there's several scenes of her trying to like get batteries inside a remote thing that was dropped down and all that. This is why I forgot it, because it's just not that. It would have worked better as a sudden twist. Like, oh shit, she's actually alive. Why have you kept her? But that's another thing, I guess, that goes into the thing that you would like, the planning thing, or the fact that why is he keeping her? Why does Jason keep her?
Yeah, why is Jason keep... Yeah, is he banging her because she looks like a young version of his mum? Yeah. So does he want to bang his mum?
It's like he wants a woman around because, like, his mum, I think they're trying to imply that. Like,
that's what they're trying to put, because it's a fucking necklace or a locket.
It's a little bit of blending the whole part 2 when she, the end of part 2 when she gets the jumper on and pretends to be, I feel like they're doing that, like, he likes to have someone around or something.
Mummy. But then it's
around.
like, my problem with this point
but
is...
But he didn't have Mummy. That's the other weird thing that doesn't work anyway. It never really made a lot of sense in general, because Jason didn't really like. Mummy was left a thing, but then he was meant to be dead, and therefore, Mummy was there, but he didn't really necessarily even have Mummy that much in his life to be that dependent on her.
And well, it's implied that they have this house near the camp, and the camp's barely featured in it, and looks really small. And it's implied that they have a house there because there's a bed, there's all of his stuff when he was a little boy, and then at the start, when his mum's like, you killed Jason, he died a year ago today, that kind of thing, or you should have been watching him, all of that, and Jason's in a bush just watching, and I'm like, so Jason drowned in this lake by this camp, and he knows where your house is because it's by the camp, so has he just been like living here
and
for
watching
a year,
around,
watching you?
Or are they trying to say in this one that he wasn't disappeared in the lake and she's just because you tried to kill my thing, but she says you killed my... That's what I mean. It doesn't... I forgot that he was in the start of that. It makes it make way less sense than it does in the original film when it's the sudden nightmare sequence, which may or may not be. We don't know if Jason actually lived. It's not until the second one when they decided, well, we can continue it and make him into the killer. In the original film, that was never the intention. It was going to be a nightmare sequence. So having Jason there at all doesn't make any bloody sense.
No, it is weird.
It makes me think in the head they have like a scene where like Jason goes to pick up Mummy's head, like in, what is it, like Django Fett and stuff. Like they have that scene of him just like picking up the head, being like, Mummy.
Mummy's dead.
So they find him in the thing. As I said, like, I do think it somewhat in certain scenes though kind of diverts some of the expectations in certain deaths, or some of the deaths are quite effective. But Jenna's death, I think generally is like, oh shit, because you think she's the final girl. She's been tagging along with Clay the whole time. Neither of them making a giant impact on this film because again, you notice how we've glossed past any of the extra. Yes, they look around. Most of their scenes are literally just
walking
around.
And looking,
walking through a forest, looking at things. Oh, there's something. Oh, there's a house. Let's go down there. Let's look up there. Oh shit, we've got to get back to them because someone's here.
And it's like listening to your two fucking boring ass co-workers talk about their weekend. And you're just like, fuck.
Okay, that's great. Cheers, man.
Thank you.
But when because they each making their way out, including his sister, they're all making their way out of the that's Amanda Richardson's Whitney. Clay, Whitney and Jenna are making their way out of the tunnels. They climb up out of one bit just before they're about to get out of the kind of the bus that's kind of it's all underneath. And just before that, Jenna suddenly gets a machete right through the chest,
which is cool.
It's a legitimately good little twist. It makes the characters somewhat more interesting, almost like they themselves were like, we've done this dull final girl because she's not the real final girl.
Yeah.
And I guess because in the opening scene, Whitney has a little bit more of a fight in her, and there's few scenes we've seen her in, she's had a little bit more fight, so they're like, brother and sister should be the final girl, not random girl he just picked up.
Yeah, not random girl.
Not random posh girl that likes assholes and likes to just hang around with them. And obviously must be a rich girl who was herself to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go with this other rich dude.
Yeah, it's kind of, she's just so bland.
It's a good little like kind of twist toward the end, I think, when we're thinking of final girl kind of thing, as in like they got a kind of thing. And then but then we've got the whole beating Jason.
Yeah.
Part. The whole.
They kind of they go through these underground tunnels.
After they get out of the bus, they go to the barn, don't they?
Yeah.
They get to the barn where we saw the D finds a retard guy. From earlier, who'd been like building stuff with the crane that's operated in there, and they managed to kind of subdue Jason by wrapping it around him and pulling him into it.
Yeah.
And then he gets stabbed in the chest, which obviously for some people, because they're used to the Jason that is the supernatural Jason, they would have just been, well, that's not going to fucking kill him.
Yeah.
She has her own frickin' line where, she says a line to her as she stabs him
say hi to Mummy in hell. Something like that,
Yeah, and stabs it for him. And then Jason's body gets dumped into the lake.
Yeah.
And that's,
well, they put him through the fresher as well.
We go back to we do homage the original by having the jump scare at the end.
Yeah, which really got Anna.
Did it?
Yeah, and I watched her because I was like, I wonder if she's gonna get it. But she, you know,
anyone who knew Friday the 13th obviously would know.
Would know
like,
it's coming.
Oh, there's going to be.
It's coming. So it's good to watch somebody who doesn't know see that.
Good. Yeah,
but
so it's good to know. Like this, definitely. But that's what I mean. To anyone who doesn't know the franchise, this is going to be a somewhat like fun little slasher killer. You know what I mean? There's no much more to it. You know what I mean? For certain people. And for certain people of that generation who liked actors like Jared Padalecki, then this probably would have worked for them quite well. You know, people that are more... I think if people know the deeper kind of stuff about Jason, or where it went, or they like a certain phase, or, for instance, you like the more undead,
Yeah.
I like the less undead. So I think I still somewhat like this film more than some of them, because I think there's a little bit more meat to the bones here than there is on some of the others that feel very much like, when's the next kill coming? Kind of thing, but it still pretty much is that, because that's mainly what we've talked about.
Mainly, yeah,
you know, I mean, I'm not saying there's much more depth to this kind of the story here or things like that. But I somewhat am okay with the slightly more serious tone of it, kind of thing. Sometimes I felt like, although some of them were really fun, I still find that some of them were so like somewhat forgettable. Kind of thing. I blend them all together in my head, to be honest.
Yeah, whereas I think I prefer the kind of later embracing the kind of wacky and the fun of it, you know? So I feel like for this, it feels like too much like it's been put through the lens of, you know, that Texas Chainsaw remake and that, we need to make everything... This was kind of around the same time as, like, maybe The Dark Knight, you know, when everything needs to be dark and gritty, you know.
I mean, it definitely was. I'm pretty sure in terms of horror around about 2009, all the late 2000s to early 2010s, you had a lot of remakes, a lot of supernatural, a lot of more serious kind of tone, dark kind of films. Not a huge amount of really like tons of like, this is a fun kind of horror. I feel like that's coming back. Bit more back around in the the late 2010s to early 2020s, where they've been a bit more like nostalgia kind of based. You know, Stranger Things starts a whole nostalgia burst of everything, didn't it?
And just have
nostalgia.
Yeah, of
so
course.
Just have fun with the old throwback, a bit more thing. We don't need to take it seriously. We can enjoy this a little.
We can have
more.
some fun, you know.
And that's that's not quite what we get here. So I think some of the likeness of this film comes down to one, how picky you are about certain things, within plot, and Jason himself in terms of how he gets around places, why he's a weed farmer, why he does these day-to-day things. Those are going to piss some people off, but it also depends on, I think, which area of Jason, what type, which version you like. If you are more of the original, earlier stuff, I think you'd be more willing to like some of this than I think if you are
probably
more of the later phase and more well-known, probably, Jason. You know what I mean?
Probably,
because the amount of people that know Jason and then don't know the original Friday the 13th, and I'm someone who really likes the original Friday the 13th. So, and I enjoy pretty much most of it, but it's just, it depends on which type you like.
Well,
now, there's a question here though, because we're putting this in as our must-see horror. Now, I personally would say the original Friday the 13th is an absolute must-see horror. It's got a twist the first time you see it, when you don't know what's going to happen and you don't know where, because we didn't do this as must-see horror.
No, we didn't.
Like the original needs to be referenced. That the original is, although we're like somewhat of a rip-off of other horrors of the time, the first time you see it, and if you don't know who the killer is, and you don't know it's Mrs. Voorhees, and you don't know the thing, it adds extra fun to that film because you don't know who's killing and where it's happening, and it has some fantastic deaths in Kevin Bacon's deaths. Some of those fantastic. I think purely on like the everyone should see it kind of level, I think the original should be a must-see horror for me personally.
I'm debating, and I don't know if it is because I know like how the franchise develops and that kind of thing. Like there's stuff there. If we're talking specifically about the first film, there is quite a lot of things that I do like about it. So I think I would say it's must-see horror. I would say this
purely for knowing for the other ones, like jumping into some of the other ones. I don't know which other ones I would put on a must-see horror list, if I'm totally honest. I don't know which ones would be like, you have to see this. Like, you need to know this within like the zeitgeist. like, I don't know whether the third one would make it in purely because that's the creation slightly of the one you know, or whether it would be later ones like
I think
part 7,
4 or 6 are probably the ones that I'd say are the best of the franchise. And if I said to somebody like, oh, if you watch, you should watch the series of Friday the 13th, and they said, I've only got time for some reason to watch 2 of the films or one of them, I'd say either watch 4 or 6. 4 is the best of the more grounded, serious ones. 6 is the genesis of the characters. Of the Jason. However, I would the first one I probably would say, but I don't think I'd put it kind of really high. I wouldn't put it up there with stuff like The Omen. We covered that as a must-see horror. Yeah. I wouldn't put it up there. I'd put it kind of.
I'm not saying it's as good. I think, but within the general kind of horror films generally, like I think the original is a good film. I think it's better when you see it for the first time than it necessarily is rewatching it again and again. But I think it has some of the stuff that inspired other horror films as well.
Yeah, I think it's worth that.
It took from Halloween, and things like that, but it also had enough things of its own that other horror films were kind of born based on it, I think. So I think as a ground level, like that original one thing. Now, the remake isn't meant to be on the must-see horror list anyway, and I wouldn't put it on the must-see horror list. No. Like, it doesn't... Like many other sequels in the Friday the 13th, I don't think all of them would deserve a place. Like, say, Friday the 13th 5 definitely doesn't deserve... you know what I mean? Or the final... the final chapter
Jason Goes to Hell.
Oh, sorry, no.
The final chapter is one of the better ones.
That's the fourth one. No, not the final chapter, I'm mixing up because they... ended it and started it.
They started and restarted.
Jason Goes to Hell, definitely not. But things like that. But Freddy vs. Jason.
Good film. Enjoyable.
Jason X even. I think there's some fun to be had with that.
Yeah.
But whether they'd be like, you have to watch these 100 horror films, probably not. Kind of thing. I just think the original kind of earns its place for a different reason than necessarily the other ones would do.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I think... Well, that's it for our must-see horror of Friday the 13th. Linking a little bit to the original there, but
kind of. I know it's a well thought of film, but come and let us know your thoughts on the remake of Friday the 13th. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CMDH Podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. We will see you next week where we circle back to our video nasties as we discuss Tenebrae. Be sure to stay safe. If you go camping in the woods and you see some weed out there, just leave it alone. It's not worth it. Take care. Bye bye.